Ramlethal Valentine has been defeated only 1 week after her declaration of war. In Babylon, strange grey ash is raining from the sky, and the once bustling city is now a deserted wasteland. With no survivors found, but all structures still intact, the world watches on in confusion. Some believe it to be Ramlethal's doing. Others say it's caused by a change in St. Elmo's fire, but only a select few realize the truth. The Conclave has finally played its hand. The Cradle has awakened, and the last dawn has begun.
では諸君、始めようか。世界征服だ。
Heaven or hell. Get ready to rock.
Guilty Gear Xrd, Sign, Story Mode. Moments before Ramlethal's declaration of war on October 21st, she meets with the Conclave to see if they're mentally prepared to proceed with the common goal of activating the Cradle. Libraria has doubts because of the projected casualty count, but Axis chides her, emphasizing that there isn't enough time to make humanity understand. Libraria concedes that the Conclave only exists because of what they intend to do today. Cronus then signals the beginning of the last dawn. Days later, following the destruction of Babylon, King Leo Whitefang is scrambling to get search and rescue efforts underway when he's contacted by King Kai Kisk, requesting approval for temporary release of Elfelt Valentine. Leo declines, so Kai decides to act alone to authorize her release. Elfelt's constraints are removed, and she immediately deploys from Kai's Royal Fleet 1 airship. Within seconds, she's able to nullify Ramlethal's self-destruct attack on Sol and subdue her. Elfelt, like her sister Ramlethal, are creations beholden to Mother, just like the original Valentine of Baptisma 13. Unlike the others, however, Elfelt was born with no knowledge of her true mission up until her memories were unlocked on the day of her wedding. Finding herself at odds with her programmed role to bring about human omnicide, she decides to leave her fiancé, a death metal vocalist, at the altar. She then finds Kai and chooses to warn him of the coming dangers instead. We flash back to a research lab in 2014. Arya asks Frederick if he's ever wanted to be a bird. He says no, but flying would be cool, so why not a cockroach? Arya calls him unromantic. Asuka arrives, and the conversation shifts towards human experiences. What would you do if the world was going to disappear tomorrow? Frederick replies, "Stop whatever's ending the world, or die trying." Arya then says, "You mean spend it with someone you love?" A year later, in 2015, Frederick celebrates the creation of Asuka's stabilized gear cells and the end of human illness. But Asuka's concerned about them being weaponized. They agree that they'd rather destroy the research than allow that to happen. Asuka tries to tell Frederick something about Arya, but the moment passes. Another year later, in 2016, Frederick discovers Arya's terminal illness. She doesn't want him to drop everything and find a cure, nor put her in cryosleep. She just wants to not be alone, and spend her time with Frederick. In Bedman's dream world, he analyzes the history of Sol Badguy, and reports to his unknown client that he finds him fascinating. Shortly afterward, alone, he ambushes a gathering of Slayer, Milia Rage, and Venom, who've decided to report their intel on the Cradle to Illyria. Bedman's client notices that he's having fun fighting assassins and notes the similarity between him and his sister, Delilah. Bedman is displeased at the topic, but reiterates that his sister is the reason they must create an absolute world. Aboard Royal Fleet 1, Sol, Kai, and Sin hear the radio reporting a Babylon cover story crediting the Illyrian forces, keeping the existence of Elfelt a secret. Some of the public believe the catastrophe might have been caused by St. Elmo's fire, a naturally occurring giant lightning bolt that strikes once every 13 years. It's celebrated for once saving several members of the Holy Order during the Crusades, as it struck a group of gears, giving humanity the upper hand. To prevent it from causing massive casualties in a populated area, Illyria Castle itself was built to be a massive lightning rod to attract it. Elfelt further explains the truth about the Conclave to Kai, Sol, and Sin. Ramlethal escapes her interrogation room and threatens to destroy the ship itself, but Elfelt once again nullifies her abilities, as they are sisters with similar programming. Without any ability to fight back, all Ramlethal can do is talk. Sin, who quickly becomes friends with Elfelt, attempts to reach out to Ramlethal's emotional side as well, and gives her a mage hound, a magical puppy that keeps biting her. Sol warns Sin that these Valentines aren't human, aren't to be trusted, and to expect betrayal. Sin doesn't care, and points out that Sol's just projecting his own insecurities. Meanwhile, King Leo Whitefang debriefs US President Vernon on the captured Valentines. Not long afterwards, the cradle is detected reappearing over the Black Sea. A transmission comes in from Major Lyle of the Istanbul Battalion, en route to Babylon. They're near enough to have a visual on the target. King Leo commands him to approach cautiously and only provide intel, but Major Lyle defies the order and goes on full offensive. The cradle activates again, and its energy sphere engulfs the area. Johnny contacts Foss for help with May's unknown ailment, which appears to only be affecting Japanese people. Faust looks at her patient record and realizes that Japanese colony residents have been receiving a placebo instead of correct treatment. May, in the meantime, distraught after Ramlethal called her a disease, decides to leave home to keep her friends safe, but Chip convinces her to return. As they reunite with the Jellyfish Pirates, Bedman appears, having defeated the assassins single-handedly. Johnny and Chip are about to lose when Zato interferes, saving them. Bedman escapes. Eno brings Axel Lowe to the backyard, where he meets Asuka and delivers a message from the original, as it can only be heard by the intended recipient. It's indecipherable noise, but Asuka understands it, and thanks Axel by offering some sweets to go with his tea, with flavors that can only be experienced in the backyard. Axel, fearful, politely declines and asks to leave, wondering how the man behind justice and the Crusades could be so polite. Bonding over their unusual parental situations, Elle tells Sin that if he ever feels like calling Kai Dad someday, he should do it. She then explains that her mother is not a real person, but actually an implanted concept she's programmed to obey. Her abilities allow her to find people with the right code, like Soul or Sin, but when she ran away from her mission and used it, it somehow led her to Kai instead. 2074, the day Justice awakens. At a relaunched Gear project facility, Asuka looks on during a test activation of Justice when something goes horribly wrong. An entity from within the backyard attempts to make contact. It was identical to the Dawn of Revival, except this time, the manifestation of a divine will now had a perfect vessel to birth itself into, no longer confined to electronics. Suddenly, the information density detected within Justice spikes to the equivalent of a galaxy cluster. Within seconds, using DNA data acquired from Justice, the being begins replicating additional bodies by the hundreds, simultaneously manifesting them into reality in her immediate surroundings, floating above Japan. Asuka realizes that at this rate of replication, within the hour, humanity will be lost. Calling out to Justice as Aria, he tells her that he's switching to manual override, charges her gamma ray to maximum output plus 40, and gives the command to fire. His lab tech says this will vaporize the entire country, and can't bring herself to do it. Asuka apologizes for asking her, and fires it himself. Arya screams in confusion as a blinding light engulfs everything. Kai receives a secret data log from Leo. It's revealed that Major Lyle's battalion inexplicably survived the Cradle, and that their attacks were deflected by Absolute Defense Felion, an extremely specialized spell that repels everything physical and magical that can only be performed by the Sanctus Maximus or a Conclave member. Kai decides it isn't safe to discuss further plans until they're out of reach from Conclave surveillance, in the one place off the grid, Zep. Sol disagrees with Kai's methods, to which Kai then asks Sol bluntly if he's only after revenge, and if he sincerely doesn't care what happens to the rest of the world.
お前は本当にあの男に復讐を果たすためだけに私たちと行動を共にしているのか。
なんだ急に。
知りたいんだ。お前は本当に世界の運命に興味がないのか。
つまらねえことを聞くな。
つまらなくなどない。確かにお前はあの男に改造を施され人間ではなくなったのかもしれない。だがそれで心や魂まで変化が起きてるわけではないはずだ。
はあ？だからなんだ。
お前を信じたいんだ。最後にはきっと人々の剣となって戦ってくれるのだと。
何を言い出すのかと思えば笑わせるな。
Sol says he exists to kill all gears and that man. Kai asks what makes his wife and child so different. Why not destroy them? Sol says the conversation's over, but Kai tells him that he can't run from the truth. Sol threatens Kai. Kai tells him to try. He then asks him what comes next after revenge. Sol says he doesn't think that far ahead. Kai tells Sol that he knows nothing about his past or even his real name, but tomorrow always comes, and when it does, Sol has a home with his family.
気持ち悪いことを言うな。頭でも打ったのか。
さあな。ジャスティスの子であるディジーをめとったんだ。きっと私も普通ではないのさ。
Sin and Elle spend more time with Ramlethal in the interrogation room, and eventually get her to open up by introducing a hamburger from fast food Danny Missiles. Over time, they grow closer. Elle thanks Sin for what he's doing, but asks why he's attempting to befriend an enemy. Sin explains that he empathizes with the feeling of being thought of as a tool, or a machine that has to suppress its emotions to not be abandoned. President Gabriel personally receives Kai and Sol as they arrive at Zepp. He informs them that an unexpected guest, Zato 1, arrived earlier and is currently waiting to speak to them. Zato 1 explains that he's only alive due to the machinations of the Conclave, and thanks to that, he can shed light on their motives. They control the cradle, and inside the cradle is the body of the god of destruction, Justice. Evidently, since the Conclave aren't satisfied with already covertly controlling the world politically, their goal must be a world where they control all free thought as well. The resurrection of Justice, who has already demonstrated the power to globally mind control an entire species, might allow them to accomplish this. The resurrection experiment with Zato and Eddie taught them how to bind their own soul to her body and assume full control. The possibilities of this plan strike Sol, Kai, and Gabriel as dangerously plausible. But just then, they receive a report that Bedman has infiltrated Zepp by his lonesome.
織物に客人の手を借りたとあってはゼップの名折れだ。皆事が済むまでゼップ名産の茶でも楽しんでいていただこう。
大統領は
狩りには獲物を追い立てる犬が必要だからな。貴様か、随分と派手に暴れてくれたな。損害請求は誰にすればいい？元老院か、それともバレンタインか。寝たままでは会話もままならないか。ならばとっておきの目覚ましをプレゼントしてやろう。名付けるアグニテン。
Gabriel tracks down Bedman, who's startled by the strength of Gabriel's bare hands. He attempts to escape, but Gabriel physically stops him, slamming him to the ground. He is brought in for questioning, but ultimately to no avail. Kai contacts Leo from Zepp and updates him on the situation, then asks for authority to release a special person to help fight the Cradle. Bedman visits Ramlethal in a dream, explaining that things have not gone according to plan, but he still succeeded in reaching her. He explains that she failed her mission and did not self-destruct, so it's Mother's will that she be erased to stop any further info from being compromised. Ram explains that it's because her and Elle's powers cancel each other out, but she accepts Mother's decision. She asks if she can take her dog with her as a last request. Bedman is startled by this blatant display of emotions and becomes immediately upset with his client upon realization that Ramlethal showed signs of a personality. Suddenly, he hears Sin entering the room and hides. Bedman watches as Sin has a heart-to-heart with Ram to help her understand the new feelings she's experiencing.
てめえ、いつの間に。
Bedman interrupts and drags them both into his dream world. He then decides to teach her the meaning of the word replacement.
犬はすまなかったね。でもこれが一番手っ取り早く分かりやすいと思ったんだ。君にはどうやら感情がある。だから代わりという意味を知るべきだ。
Apologetically, he kills her magehound puppy, then creates a new identical one with a summoning spell. When the dog doesn't bite her, she realizes something's wrong.
違う、これじゃない。どうして同じ犬なのに何が違うの？
そうだ。これが代わりということだ。でも君は前の犬が好きだったんだよね。
みんながそれぞれ違うの。私も違うの。
ラム。
Bedman goes off on his client, forgiving Valentine's emotions, asking her what the hell she was thinking, then tells her that she can finish the show on her own. She apologizes, admitting fault, and reassures him that he's necessary to complete the absolute world. Bedman accepts her apology. In the Illyrian War Room, Leo introduces President Vernon to Kai's requested help, Dr. Paradigm. Immediately, Paradigm begins a complete analysis of the Cradle events so far. He concludes that first, the Cradle is not only carrying the body of justice, there are other life signs as well. Furthermore, the attack on Babylon was not an attack, but actually a means of transportation. Lastly, the remains of the victims of Babylon left behind gray dust, which is exactly what happens when normal life enters the backyard. But Lyle's unit survived their encounter, due in part to being one of the forces that fought alongside Kai during Baptisma 13. They all received special blessings of protection against magic tuning from the backyard. He concludes that the Cradle is hiding in the backyard, but must reappear in our reality once every 26 hours to come up for air, and that presents the perfect chance to turn the tables. Vernon is thoroughly impressed and remarks that he may have been too quick to judge Kai when he spoke of coexistence with Gears. Dr. Paradigm also casually reveals that the Opus units deployed worldwide are mostly Gears, which appropriately panics Vernon and Leo.
次のゆりかごの行き過ぎのタイミングとその出現範囲をある程度絞り込んである。ゆりかごの再出現ポイントを取り囲むように各国の精鋭兵力で包囲網を敷く。出現と同時に包囲網を狭め、一斉に全火力を注ぎ込んで集中砲火を浴びせるのだ。ゆりかごごと中身のジャスティスを粉砕するぞ。
Together with a joint coalition of forces from various nations and Soul Bad Guy, they plan to intercept the next appearance of the Cradle, projected to be above the northern Black Sea. With 420 tracking beacons, hundreds of international airships, Dr. Paradigm's secret weapon, and a half-magic, half-black tech intercontinental ballistic missile named Vagilanda.
Vagilanda, 発射!
With Soul Bad Guy riding on top of it, the counterattack operation commences. Suddenly, Bedman appears and wastes no time as he begins destroying tons of beacons in the projected area. Leo attempts to stop him and falls short, but Johnny joins him, and together they're able to stall Bedman for time. Faust, with help from the Mei ship, manages to use his teleporting door to get a backup beacon placed just before the cradle appears. Allowing the air fleet to immediately surround it on all sides. Before Cronus can get his bearings, Paradigm's secret weapon, That Man, appears before the cradle.
久しいね、クロノス。こんな形で再会するなんて残念。
やめか。なぜここに。防衛砲撃撃ち落とせ。
無駄だよ。
ゆりかごには光線を目的とした装備はない。この程度の攻撃で彼を倒すことはできん。だがそれは貴様も同じだ。いかにギアメーカーであろうと。
そうだね。確かに絶対防壁フェリオンは僕の力でもディスペル。しかし破壊することはできる。僕と彼と。
それバッドガイ。やはりてめえか。
フレデリック、今は作戦に集中して。
After a quick greeting, that man tells Cronus to not waste any time attacking, and explains that while absolute defense Felion can't be dispelled, it can be destroyed with the force of a spontaneous microverse.
僕を媒介にしてバックヤードから直接引き出す攻撃。フレデリックが繰り出す拳は今地球上では成し得ない高エネルギーを作り出している。それを僕が質量に変換しシュバルツシルト半径の限定空間に閉じ込め、そして魔法防壁のある物理空間そのものを消滅させ別の小宇宙を誕生させる。あとはこの世界の崩壊をせき止めるフォローをするだけ。簡単な話だ。
Sol destroys the cradle's barrier, opening the way for all airships to open fire, vaporizing everything until the only thing left when the smoke clears. Is the corpse of Justice, full-sized and stripped of her outrage armor. The tea room itself is physically located inside her body, and from there, Cronus begins to directly shift her into the backyard. That man moves to stop the escape, but Bedman suddenly jumps between them and teleports that man away. Sol is still recovering from his last attack, but stands to chase after Justice. Alpha flies and pulls him away before he can, explaining that even if he won, it would be a suicide mission to leave him trapped in the backyard. Back in the war room, everyone meets to debrief. Dr. Paradigm considers the operation a failure, and Vernon confirms that Justice looked just the same as she did when he saw her last during the Crusades. Al teaches Ram that it's okay to like yourself.
私の知る限り、それはナルシストといって悲しい生物だと記憶してるけど、いいの？それでいいんだよ。
Sol and Kai discuss the effect these recent attacks will have on the people. Kai laments that humanity is still healing scars from the Crusades, and that with magic they were working towards an overall improvement of the human condition. Stolz says, yeah, things are stable and people have nice lives, but that comes at the cost of their freedom of choice. Kai asks if he then advocates for anarchy and chaos. Stolz says no, but eventually people go from appreciating what you give them to expecting it, and then they get scared of losing it. Is that how we should live? Kai replies that not all people have the strength to stand on their own.
だがそれ、今のお前もまた、ただ何かを恐れているだけに見える。
何？
真を気遣うお前を見て、それが分かったよ。誰も巻き込みたくない。違うか？
キアの血が衝動をかきたてる。何もかも破壊しろと本能が指図してくる。これを止めるにはあの男を見つけ出し全てを聞き出すをほかげ。もしそこにも答えがなければその先に真っ当な生き方なんてありはしない。
Eventually, with Ramlethal's help, the group discerns based on the date that the Conclave plans to harness St. Elmo's fire, the massive lightning bolt at Illyria Castle, to channel enough energy into Justice to bind Cronus' soul to her vessel. Leo calls for a full evacuation of the city surrounding the castle, leaving only the Opus units behind. Paradigm proposes a plan. Amplify the energy from St. Elmo's fire and overload Justice and the Conclave. Coincidentally, Dizzy, free from the Thunder Seal, reunites with Sin and Kai for the first time in 2 years.
もっと素敵な再会ができたらよかったのですけど。髪の毛、随分と伸びましたね。
ええ、ここのところ切っても切ってもすぐに伸びるようになってしまって。
見違えただろ。2年前から80センチは伸びたからな。
立派になって。お願い、こっちへ来て。もっとよく見せて。
俺はいいよ。
え？
俺たちは絶対この危機を乗り越える。これが最後なんてみじんも思わない。それに母さんは絶対に俺が守る。だから今は母さん、今この時は甘えてくれ。父さんに。シン。
As the time draws near, Cronus, Axis, and Libraria share a final moment to reaffirm their resolve. Knowing they won't meet again, they vow to reunite in the next life and share some tea with Baldius.
来世で
来世で。
来世で。
Commencing the operation, Justice appears above the west tower of Illyria Castle and connects energy tendrils to the lightning rod. Cronus preemptively begins the soul-binding process, allowing him to command the gear cell-based Opus units to attack the castle plaza. Kai and Leo reminisce about the old days on the battlefield and intercept the Opus army on the ground level, with reinforcements from Sin and Elfelt, wielding her Cypress Project magic weapons. Eventually they get split up, and while Kai is distracted,
さすがの連合といえど、視界外から撃たれるとは予想できなかったようだな。
あなたは。
君を殺すのは少々心苦しい。しかし、間もなく我々の新たな世界が始まる。
君のような人物はどんな脅威になるかわからない。悪いが人類の未来のためここで退場してもらう。
Axis executes Kai point blank with a fifth shot, holding a black tech revolver. But as he turns to walk away,
そうではない。
バカな。そんなはずはない。君は確かに死んだ。そうなるように撃ったのだ。
国民は私が言うような青臭い理想論を実現できるなどと信じていない。私に託された期待は正しい政治ではない。だがたとえどんな暴力が現れようと私ならばそれに屈しない。そう信じてくれているんだ。
one of his eyes glows crimson red. Axis, confused by Kai's new gear-like power, staggers backwards as Kai destroys him in a single blow.
王としての私の務めはどんな悪にも決して膝を屈しないことだ。レオ、今行くぞ。
As St. Elmo's fire strikes the tower, Justice comes alive. From his nerve center, Kronos proclaims victory.
ついに我々の勝利だ。見ているか、慈悲なき刑事よ。見ているか、ギアメーカーよ。貴様たちの要求はこれで満たされる。我々の手によってな。そして貴様らが何を考えようと、我々はもはや何者にも屈しない力を手に入れる。
Dizzy charges and fires a gamma ray into the already charged electric conductor, causing a massive energy overload. As Justice begins to malfunction, Libraria returns to Kronos, saying that this loss is retribution they deserve. Kronos tells her to go find the Gearmaker, as only he can preserve the future of humanity now. Libraria refuses, saying that that should be Kronos' duty, and that she wishes they talked more. She then casts a spell, teleporting him away.
Libraria, 何をするつもりだ。やめろ。
行けフレデリック。おう。
While Justice is weakened, Soul attacks from atop the tower, landing a critical strike that detonates her core. She doubles over, collapsing the castle tower as she falls. Hours later, the sun rises as everyone recovers from the rubble. They all appear to be alright, though Dizzy has passed out from exhaustion. Suddenly, as Sin finds L, she attacks him.
ジャスティスの覚醒によって私のミッションは達成されました。
やっぱりこういうことかよ。
With a cold, emotionless demeanor, Elfelt says that her job was to monitor Sol to make sure he didn't destroy Justice and to ensure that he didn't wake up. Her true mission was even concealed from her own self until now. Sin is in disbelief, but Sol sees this as just another betrayal. He says that all the Valentines had emotions, even if they claimed not to, and that there's clearly a boundary separating the current Elfelt from the one they know. He demands that she bring her back.
私は主としての命令に逆らうことができない。エルフェルとバレンタイン、出来損ないの人形どもは殲滅します。
Elfelt goes into attack mode, casting her Rain of Judgment. But Sol closes the distance, destroying her summoned attack apparatus. From Bedman's dream, he and his client observe the situation with satisfaction and initiate a sequence that teleports the corpse of Justice away. Sol approaches Elfelt, but is stopped by her barrier. Absolute defense failure. Nonetheless, Sol keeps punching at the barrier, demanding that the inner L prove her words, that people shouldn't be alone. Words that echo those of Arya. For a moment, his words get through, and the old Elfelt emerges, apologizing that she can't fight Mother's will. In her brief moment of clarity, she apologizes and begins a self-destruct sequence.
こんなことなら私は道具として生まれてきたかった。こんなことなら感情なんてなければよかったのに。
But just as she does, it's stopped by Ramlothal.
感情はこれは大事なもの。今なら私の方がそれを知っている。母さんは間違ってる。あなたも私も道具なんかじゃない。深夜私にとって違うなんだ。だから必ず助ける。だから待ってて。待ってる。私ずっと待ってる。
As Elfelt vanishes, Sol immediately starts walking away.
親父？
何してる？さっさと取り返しに行くぞ。これ以上奪われてたまるか。
Elsewhere, in the rubble of the central organ tower, Cronus survives alone. As he takes a step, Faust appears behind him, asking where he plans to go now. There are many questions to be answered, in particular, what he planned to do with the Japanese colonies. Cronus tells Faust that he can carry about whatever revenge he wishes, and that he has no idea what colony situation is being referred to.
白を切るのですか？あなたたちはこんなことをしておいてまだ飽き足らないのですか？いや、本当にわからない。ジャパニーズコロニーに関しては適切な医療措置を行っているに過ぎない。
If the Conclave was not orchestrating the mysterious events in the Japanese colonies, then those orders must have come from someone with even more authority. But who could possibly have more influence than the leader of the Conclave?
それでは